Welcome to Leaders with Leverage. I'm so excited to be here because I'm here with, a mentor and somebody that I really admire, but a good friend too, Jim Collison. Welcome, Jim.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for asking me to be on, and don't set me up too high. We've all got we've all got things that we need to work on.
But you and I did a podcast like a year and a half ago, and I remember you told me something about myself I didn't know, and so it's stuck with me for a long time. This idea of learning about who we are, our strengths, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I just think that's why I really feel like we're connected because of that feedback that you gave me.
Oh, that's good. Good.
Yeah.
Well, we're all connected in a lot of ways, right? And I think oftentimes we miss those opportunities because we're just not waiting or listening for them. And
Yeah.
and so many people around me, I mean, there's had so many great moments like that where people have spoken truth to me, and
Yeah.
and not every time I listened, but the times I did, you're like, oh, that's actually really profound, So
Yeah.
I think we got
Right.
to listen. There's been a lot of work on listening lately. Like everybody's talking about listening in the context of
Mhm.
leadership, and I think we all have something to learn there.
Oh my gosh, there's room to grow in listening, that's for sure. So, but just start out by, I introduced you and kind of gave like a formal introduction of you. But when you look at your kind of journey as a leader, as a professional, can you really kind of recount it for me or just tell me some of the highlights if you had to express
Hmm.
kind of how it felt in your shoes?
Yeah, I mean, leadership really started young at 19 in the military and
Wow.
was thrown into some leadership roles, which I didn't do a really good job on. I mean, I was 19. The
Yeah.
military does some things to kind of help. They send you to some training, and they have this month-long live-in school, NCO academy that you go to. And it taught me a lot. I think I spent the next 25 years figuring out how to be a good leader, or just to be a leader, not a bad leader. Let's just put it that way. How to be not a bad leader in that. And I mean, leadership is hard, and
Mhm.
it's not for everybody. And there's those who can do it really, really well, really well. And there's others that can't. And so, I'm still learning in that process. So some time in the military, I got out of that, did some retail banking for a while, and I was kind of a subject matter expert during those times. But 15 or so years into that led me into some technology project management, which led me to some project management and leadership here at Gallup, where I'm at. And then opened up this role in community management, which was totally new to me. Never thought in a million years I'd be doing this. It was a surprise job, which I really love doing. And I invented the job here at Gallup. Like,
Oh,
it
that's
was
cool.
one of those where you're like, hey, somebody needs to do this. And they're like, okay, you go do it type deal, right? Okay. And, I've been in that role 8 years now. And even for the first maybe 3 years, didn't even have a title for it. It wasn't something official. It was just like, well, you're doing it. Okay, we'll figure out how it gets done. But I always go back to parenting. I have 5 children, 34 to 24 now in age. And if I ever did write a book, and I never will, I would write a book that said everything I learned about leadership, I learned from my children.
Mhm.
And they really they taught me a lot about leadership and leading them and working with them. And this week, we've had some things going on at the house. And so the kids have been over for some of those. And we spent a lot of time on the deck talking. And I just realized, like, even this week, all that time I poured into them. And as a dad, I wasn't perfect, right? But
Yeah.
they're willing to come back and talk to me now, in their 20s and 30s. They're willing to come back. And we've had some really tender moments over the week. And that was a validation of some of those leadership. In the moment, leadership is not exciting. In the moment, it's not fulfilling. In the moment, it's just hard work helping people do things they don't want to do. The payoff, I think, is much farther down the road. And I think this
Yeah.
is where a lot of leaders really get it wrong. They think it's going to be rewarding in the moment. It's
Mhm.
horrible in the moment in most cases. The payoff is further down the line. And I see that in my kids and my parenting.
Wow, that is so true and so well spoken. Because I was going to say, for people that are getting into leadership,
Yeah.
how do you define it? and what does it look like? But I love that you've already set us up for it's hard. So tell us, like, what would you tell somebody that's just starting out?
Yeah, I tell this to future leaders here at Gallup all the time when they come in, and I say you're about to embark on something you're not ready for. You have no idea what you're up against, and it's with people, so it's infinitely hard because we all, I mean, humans are just really difficult to move to get to do things, right? The essence of leadership is is changing people's minds, is getting them to move in a direction they may not want to go, and they may want to. I mean, I'm painting it like it's difficult in all circumstances, and it's not in all, but it is in most. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to convince people. I know you don't want to do this naturally, but as a group, this is where we're going,
Yeah.
and I need you to get on board, with this so we can move forward. And in a way, and I think in a way that's not authoritarian or is not demanding. Now, listen, in the military, there are times you need to be an authoritarian because people's lives are on the line. It's completely different, right?
Yeah.
The military thinks, yeah, you need to tell somebody what to do because other people will die if they don't do those kinds of things, right? That's not the typical case in the rest of the corporate world, right? But people still coming in with their own selfish desires, with their own needs, with their own wants, with their own expectations, and moving them in a direction, especially on a team, which gets infinitely harder because now you're adding that difficulty on top of it. It's just a lot of hard work, and you have to really like people to want to do. I think this is another
Yeah.
area of leadership. Maybe I'm being too honest on this, but this is another area of leadership where I think people think leadership is about telling other people what to do, and that couldn't be farther from the truth,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're really there to serve them,
Hmm.
not lead. I think serving and leading are the same thing in a lot of ways, but not tell them what to do, but to bring them along, to serve them in that, and they'll follow you when you do that, right? When you're
Yeah.
leading in that way.
Yeah. So what are some of the things, what are some of your best practices that you do, maybe like to prepare? Like do you have a thing that you prepare before you talk to some of your people, or
Mm,
how do you structure how you move through your leadership week?
yeah. So I'm in a little bit of a unique situation now because I feel like I manage, we have about 14,000 certified coaches around the world who
Yeah.
it's really my job to manage them, to lead
Okay.
them. They
Yep.
may not think that's true, but that's the truth of it, right?
It's true. It's
It is
true.
that's what my job is to do, is to lead them. And so it's a day for me, that's a daily exercise. And I almost said a daily battle. In some ways it is,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm getting emails and instant messages and stuff on LinkedIn, right, from people. Hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? So there's some elements to it that are just informational. They need to know how to do something. I know how to
Hmm.
do it the way I want them to do it. So I influence them away. By the way, in the Clifton Strengths lexicon, right, these 4 domains of leadership, influencing is one of those. I have 4 of my top 5 in influencing, right? So like I was built for this role. I want to tell people what to do in the sense when they've asked me a question. And I think that's important. Like, you don't tell people what to do until they've asked you in a lot of ways. Hey,
Hmm.
I'm interested in your opinion. What should we do here? And then you tell them, right? So for me, so part of my role is informational. Then part of it's just solving problems. They're messed up in our system somehow. It's not working the way it's supposed to. There's a misunderstanding in some way. And so it's straightening out some of those things that have to be, done in that way. And then there's visionary leadership, right? Which is, where do we want to go for the future? What is this? What will this thing look like? What are positive directions? How can I drag this group of ragtag individuals along with me, all just trying to scrap out this thing we call coaching? And how can we all be successful together in it, right? And so there's some futuristic. I don't have futuristic high as from a theme perspective, but it's part of my job. I've got to do it. I've got to lead them in a direction. So how do I get ready for that? Well, I'm kind of designed, I'm kind of built that way to firefight every day. I wake
Yeah.
up kind of forgetting the day before and like, okay, brand new day. Let's crush this thing. Let's do this thing. Who can we help today? How can we get this done? I think it's getting myself in the right mindset every single day when I wake up to say, okay,
Mm.
my job today is to serve people. And so how can I do that in a way that helps them to be the most successful.
Mm.
Uh, Same thing when I do my podcasting. My job is not to tell people how smart I am. My job is to make other people seem and be really smart and make them the big deal, right?
Mhm.
Make them serve them in that role. And when that happens, when that works, all that stuff does come back to you as a leader, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's not like it's all given away. I think it oftentimes comes back to you in fulfillment and satisfaction as well. So I get ready every day. I put on, I wake up and like, all right, let's do this thing, and get the eye of the tiger, and then come in every day to just really help people make today better than it was yesterday.
Wow, that was so powerful. I think, as a coach, I know the power of asking questions. And I tell
Mm,
people all the time, like, we say it, but it's like when you see people, you ask a question and you stop the 7 words or less, and you allow to see that transformation when they kind of have this aha moment, you're reminded of the power. So I love that you said, what can I do today to support the people around me? Like, just even to ask, turn a question on yourself that makes it a new day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, it's for me, it's a daily fight. There are others. There are others who aren't built the way I am. They just wouldn't like that. They would get through it and be like, I don't know if I want to, how long I want to do this for. I think the key is realizing, yes, I am built that way, and I kind of thrive in it. Listen, there are moments, and today may even be one of those moments where you get to the end of the day and you're like, "Whew,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if I want to do that again."
Yeah.
But yeah, guess what? I'll be here Monday,
Yeah.
and we'll be like, all right, let's make this week better than it was last week. So I think for leaders getting that are listening to your program here, I think the key is getting yourself in the right mindset for what
Hmm.
you are going to be doing, what you know you need to do based on who you are and what you're good at, what your strengths are, and some of those kinds of things, and get yourself mentally geared up for this thing on a daily or weekly or monthly, keeping in mind it's not all about getting after it, right? You need to spend some time on yourself and some well-being. I think we all know that now. Well-being is a word over the
Yeah.
last 3 years we've heard a lot of, but you got to take care of yourself as well.
Yeah. I think that's so true. You're making me think one of a really early moment for me in my leadership. I had probably 30 people, 40 people working in my group, and they're entry level people. And I said to one of my peers, who was a good friend of mine, "Ugh, I hate managing people because it's just
Mm-hmm.
so like, ugh, they're late, and I have to tell them they're late." And he goes, "It shows." And I
Mm-hmm.
was like,
Mm-hmm.
I've held on to that for so long because it was kind of the slap in the face that I needed for somebody just to go, it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just telling them what to do. It's
Yeah.
about really understanding them. And one of those people came back to me years later and said, she sat with me by me on a plane and told me about a piece of advice I had given her at that time that I have no memory of, that stuck with her for her whole career, that she leaned. And so that makes me feel like we don't know when we have made an impression. It's
Mm-hmm.
never what we think it's going to be. Those things that
Mm-hmm.
we tell people to coach them,
Yeah.
it might just go over their head, or they might not hear it for 5 years.
Yeah. I like this idea too. I'm in a role where it's large group influence, right? I mean, I don't have, these aren't my direct reports. I don't have any way to motivate them. I can't give them more money. I can't take things away. Yeah, like I can't do that. And yet
Yeah.
I still want to move them in directions, right? I still need to convince them there are things I need them to do for the greater whole, or just for themselves and some of the work they're doing. And in some ways that's a harder form of leadership because you don't really have any levers to turn. You have to be genuine. You have to bring value. You got to convince them it's the right thing to do. You don't have any way of doing that except doing it. Like, it has to be genuine. You can't use Jedi mind tricks on them to be like, I know you're thinking this, but you need to think something else, right? We've all done those management things. I know you don't like this raise, but this is the raise you're going to get, type deal. And in this space that I don't have any of those levers to pull.
Mhm.
Actually like it. I like it better. It feels more genuine to me in some ways. But I'm built that way. I just think
Mhm.
I'm built to manage large groups of people doing things in that way, can handle that, all those things. So I embrace it. And I've gotten listen, I've had the privilege to land in this role over the last 10 years that will really be the last 20 years of my career, maybe 30
Mhm.
if I'm lucky. And so it, for me, recognizing that and seeing it has been kind of half the battle. And to be fortunate to find a role that would fit that here towards the end of my career.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little. I mean, you're you know strengths so well because you live and breathe it with people around you
Hmm.
and you talk about it. How do you apply it for yourself? How do you, like you said, what clicked for me when you said I have four influencing themes, and you said you like it when people ask you to be like on the podcast, you said to me, I like people. Well, I'm not going to, I'll just stop there. But you like
Yeah.
influence. You like when
Yeah.
people are like that and advocate for themselves because you honor that because that comes naturally to you. So, how do people know their direction?
Mm.
How can they leverage their strengths?
Yeah.
What keys or clues would you give?
It's a lot of trial and error. I mean, well, first of all, you need a framework, a structure. I mean, I'm here at Gallup. We have Clifton Strengths. There's other
Yeah.
assessments that do it. We
Yep.
we like ours. It's
Yeah.
self-serving, but I have to say it.
But it's
Like I'm in
true. Right.
studios, right? I have to say it. So understanding that framework, right? Understanding the framework of strengths to be like, okay, here are some things about me that I know. One of the benefits of knowing that or have somebody else telling me is it does remove a little bit of my own bias, of my own desires.
Mhm.
Like I thought I was a way better project manager than I was. Just experience rooted that out. Like, oh yeah, I started doing that. I mean, I took, 20 years ago, I took a project management job in technology. I thought this would be great. I'm really good at this. I really wasn't. And I fortunately I got about 18 months in and this job popped up and so I could exit that one cleanly. But I think having that, so one, having a framework about
Mhm.
yourself, and then not just a framework, but having folks around you, people around you who know you, who
Mhm.
who are not afraid to say, yeah, no, that's not really you, type deal, right? Having those conversations, we kind of call that a board of directors, having your own
Mhm.
personal board of directors kind of around you. Um, so one that you gotta kind of peel the layers of the onion back so you can kind of see what's in there, right? Then being real honest and open with yourself and thinking like, yeah, I'm not good at everything. In fact, I'm only good at a few things. If we're really honest with ourselves, there's just a few things, some of us more than others, but most of us is just a few things. Then saying, okay, what are those things? And then how can I put myself in a role where those are honored and I can exploit them? I can use them every day. Doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it took me a long time to find that career. Along the way, though, that's not wasted time. You're learning, you continue to learn more and more things about yourself, you know.
Yeah.
So, if I was back 25, 30, 35, somewhere in that age range now, I would, I'd encourage you open up a little bit. Like the corporate world puts so much pressure on us to have it all together today, and
Mhm.
nobody has that. Nobody.
Mhm.
Open up, be vulnerable, get yourself a board of directors, figure out around you, start opening up and say, what really am I good at? And then how do I find ways in the current role that I'm in or something different? How could I position myself in a way so that in the next whatever X number of years I can take advantage of those things in my career. Takes a while. That's the
Mhm.
thing. I think some people are expecting this like, well, I'll start Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, okay, it's going to take a little bit longer than that.
Yeah. It is so true, and you do pull things along the way. I remember I think it was my brother-in-law who said to me early, "It's so interesting looking back, like everything I've learned, I actually apply now. Like
Yeah.
somehow it was all worthwhile
Yeah.
because there was a place for it later on." And
Yeah.
so I've always kind of embraced that idea that might not make sense when I'm doing this right now, but there might
Yeah.
be a place for it in the future. It's an investment in yourself.
Yeah. You just never know. You just never know how those kinds of situations are going to pay off in either wisdom or understanding in the future. I mean, I don't know if I've ever been the tenderest guy in the world. I don't know if I feel all the emotions I probably should be feeling at times. Over the last couple of years, I've been kind of really thinking through this idea of emotional intelligence and
Yeah.
understanding the power of that. Not because it does affect the way I lead, it does. How I'm feeling emotionally in the moment does have you can't separate those from your leadership. Like
Yeah.
they do have an impact on what you're doing and what you're saying and how you're feeling, just as much as the training and education and all those things that you've done, plus your own physical well-being. You have to kind of think about your emotional, you know, stability or your emotional well-being in the moment, because that plays a big part in what you're doing. So understanding where I'm at today, and then like, oh, like today maybe not a great emotional day, so I'm not going to do things that require those kinds of conversations. Maybe that'd be a smart move, for me. So I think pulling that in,
Hmm.
that helps as well.
Yeah, for sure. Um, you know what? You're in an interesting circumstance too, is how do you get better? Where do you get your feedback and how do you process it?
Yeah. So I have a kind of I wouldn't say formal, but fairly formal board of directors around me of folks that I've worked with for a lot of years that I've learned to trust. They're not all my friends, by the way.
Hmm.
Some of them all give me some really hard advice. They don't actually know they're on that, but I look to them for feedback on, hey, how did this work? Because I know I'll get honest feedback from them that way.
Yeah.
So I have a group of folks around me, a pretty tight group. We don't get together on any formal basis and meet like you would, think about board of directors. But um, over the last 5 years, as I've made that post 50 conversion, right, in my life, I've begun to surround myself with folks that are not my age anymore. And I
Mm.
have lunch with all of our sales folks here, and they're all Gen Z, young millennial, or yeah, young millennials now, and have found spending time with them has been so good for me in hearing what they're thinking. Like,
Mm.
hey, you're the future, right? You're the future of the workforce. What are you thinking about? I just came before I came up here for the interview. It's a little thin today. It's a Friday, a little thin here on the campus. But there were a couple folks we've hired in the last year, and I've gotten to know them, and I waved them over to the table. Hey, come have lunch with me. Those lunch conversations are not just entertainment. I am learning from them. I am sharpening myself with them. I'm being open to them, and they ask me great questions. And so I think sometimes too we forget in our leadership roles, the future can, if they're the future, they can sharpen us as well.
Mm.
And it's not going to happen by accident. You have to make it happen.
Yeah.
And so I sit with them every lunch, and every time I have a chance, every time I'm here and I have lunch, which is a lot of days, an advantage to coming in. Yeah, I learn a ton from those
Yeah.
from those guys.
I like that idea of making space in places that you don't normally or naturally go to, the
Yeah.
person that you would ask. And I think you and I were talking about just right before we started press record about this idea of busyness and how people, it's such an excuse.
Hmm.
And, but if you're intentional and you make the space just by saying, I'm going to go down to the lunchroom and I'm going to look for
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
to sit with.
And they all sit together. Like, this isn't a matter of me inviting them. They were sitting together and I invaded. I was like, hey, can I sit with you guys? And at first they're like, okay, like, who is this guy? you know? And so I just began to invite myself
Huh.
into their world. Listen, it'd be super easy for me to go down to the cafeteria, grab lunch, go to my desk, eat while I'm doing things. That's super easy.
Yeah.
Takes way more courage to go down and start making, because our organization, like every other organization's turned over, it in the last 3 years, we've had huge amounts of turnover. There's a whole bunch of new people here.
Hmm.
It would be easy to be the old guy and say, oh, all my friends are gone. I'm a relic here. Nobody, whatever. No, it's time to re-onboard. And so I've been re-onboarding myself into the next generation. I want to be as as a significant part of their existence here, as their manager is, or as their, I want to, I don't want age to get in the way of, I want to be their friends. We've had
Yeah.
some great conversations down there, and I get a chance to influence them. And they ask me questions all the time. What do you think about this? And that's a great opportunity to informally lead them, sharpen those leadership skills a little bit in, and say, hey, do I still have it? For the kids, can I
Yeah.
still do it with the kids? Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's important. Very intentional, by the way,
Hmm.
very intentional. This wasn't a mistake. This was me saying, all right, I got to there's a whole bunch of new people. I got to figure out who these people are and get to know them. Because pre-pandemic, I knew everybody. Again, I knew the whole company. 2 years later, I didn't know anybody. Well,
Yeah.
I knew half, right? I knew half the company. So you got to be intentional about it.
Yeah. I love that. Intention is so
Yeah.
key. Is so key. Um, so what you haven't mentioned, and maybe this is just a selfish question, but you have hosted podcasts that have had millions and millions of downloads, like
Yeah.
millions, like 5
Yeah.
million,
Yeah.
and around the world. And you go to Gallup Summit and people like stand in line to take pictures with you. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, it is like you're a known entity
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the community. How does that feel? You hold influence and you have influence in themes, which allows you to hold that. But like, what does that feel like that so many people know you and
Yeah.
listen to you?
It's a ton of responsibility. Like, and I don't want to, yeah, I've joked about that at times, it's silly, all these selfies that we take and post and such. And we have a good time. And my personality, while it's big, the individual attention like that is a little uncomfortable for me. The one-on-one attention is pretty uncomfortable for me at times. And I push through it, and you smile for the pictures and some of those kinds of things. On the surface, it's very, very uncomfortable, but let's be really, really clear. It's very satisfying to see the end results of people actually moving, right? When it actually moves them, when I get emails that say, hey, I heard you say this, we did that, this is the result. That is satisfying, right? It's very, 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 very fulfilling when you get those kinds of things. They don't happen all the time, and they're it's not like it's happening every day, but it's very, that part's very, very fulfilling. And I think going back to realizing I really like and am good at that job, the
Hmm.
podcasting job, that's the one that got me into this role. I was meant to be a media guy. Never get sick of it. I love doing it, love being on the
Yeah.
microphone, love talking about it, love having
Yeah.
conversations like this with you. Yeah, I'm kind of built for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's very, very satisfying.
Hmm.
Yeah, very satisfying.
Yeah. And as somebody that sees you in that community, I think your key is, like we said, you show up really consistently.
Mm, yeah,
You're always the same trusted source, and you've really built that's who you are.
yeah.
Everybody knows.
I hold some standards to myself that I answer emails quickly.
That's
Like,
great.
and I may not have all the answers, but I consistently get. I've had half a dozen of these today already, where people are like, "Whoa, well, I thank you for getting back to me so fast."
Yeah.
That's usually the first line in the email is, "Thanks for getting back so fast." Wow, I didn't like, because that's not normal. Just to be honest,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
we're all inundated. We all have systems that take forever. Every company has giant customer support systems that just don't move as fast as people would really want them to. It's hard to get it. I don't want anybody to wait any length of time in fact, I'm guilty of answering those emails in meetings when I should be listening, and they're like, hey, what do you think, Jim? And I'm like, I don't have a clue what you just said. Can you just repeat it again? I was thinking about something else. So, but that's important to me. That's one of those values that I
Hmm.
hold. I hold very dear in my leadership, is people get a quick response.
Hmm.
So yeah,
That's great. Well, I have a love for negotiation
yeah,
and leadership. And when I think about leverage, that I think to me, that's a key component of being thoughtful about your approach and things. When I talk about leverage to you, how do you define it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think I'm going to define it through. We wrote a book 15 years ago called Strengths Based Leadership, and
Hmm.
there's 4 pillars of the 4 needs of followers: hope, stability, compassion, and trust. And I think when we think of leverage, I think about that as the ability to move someone in a direction, right? Whether it's in a sales standpoint or getting to commit to something, or whether it's changing their mind on something, right? Or a vote, right? All those
Hmm.
things as we think about in negotiations, and that's all negotiated stuff. I mean, we spend most of our life negotiating. We just don't realize it's all negotiating,
Yeah.
right? We don't call it that until I need a signed document. All of a sudden,
Yes.
then it becomes no. We're actually doing it our whole lives, right? I think it's a big part of everything that we do. But I think my values would land in that I think we need to think through those 4 needs: hope, stability, compassion, and trust. What that builds on is the ability to me to speak into someone and negotiate from a perspective of overwhelming evidence or
Hmm.
overwhelming love or
Hmm.
overwhelming confidence that I don't say you should do this. They say, how do I do it?
Hmm.
Right? I want them to be asking me, hey, I see something. How do I get on board? Like, how do I do that? That to me, that is the best form of negotiating, is when they've changed their mind based on my behavior or my influence or my whatever, fill in the blank there. They're making
I
that
love
decision
it.
without me having to do anything. I've created a
Yeah.
vortex of
Yeah.
whatever, and I'm pulling them along with it. Yeah, that's my
Wow.
preferred. I'm a terrible closer. I admitted that to you when we were talking. I'm terrible at closing. I don't want to do it that way. I want to be so persuasive. They make the decision without me ever having to ask for it.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I want. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you gotta just close the deal. Okay. Are we doing this thing or not? Uh,
That was so good too, because you can inspire your leadership can be inspired by
yeah.
just kind of sitting back and watching the impact that you likely had on
Yeah.
somebody, or just
Yeah.
reflecting back. That's pretty powerful.
We're going through this phase here at Gallup. We have an internal stock program, and we talk about it from time to time about taking ownership in Gallup and the value of that stuff. I often have conversations with younger employees who are just getting here, and I say, let me tell you about the opportunities you have in this, and let me paint a picture for you of what it could be. And this doesn't guarantee anything, but I want you to know. I mean, I've been doing this for 15 years. Here's some of the things I've seen in it. How can and I at the end of I don't I don't have anything for them to sign. I don't. It's not my job to get them to do it. I just want to overwhelm them so that they just go and do what they need to get done, and then we'll come back to me, because I had somebody do that for me 15 years ago. Say,
Hmm.
hey Jim, let me show you a few things here and the benefit of this. And I believed him, and I did it, and I saw some pretty incredible things happen. So I want to provide that for others too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. This has been such a great
Good.
conversation. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I enjoy, I enjoy this. So I need to do it for
Yeah.
another 3 hours. I'm not sure anybody'd listen for another
I
three
know, me
hours,
too.
but yeah, yeah.
It's not
You
you.
probably wouldn't even listen to for another 3 hours.
No, I totally would. I have like we may have to do a part two because
Yeah.
there's just so many things to cover. What would you want to tell people about connecting with you, or what could they do if they enjoyed this conversation? What could they do?
No, well, first of all, thanks for enjoying it. Not everybody does, but I appreciate you if you did. A couple ways to connect for the work that I do with Gallup and Clifton Strengths. Just search Clifton Strengths on any social platform and be able to find it. We have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Clifton Strengths. That will get you there. And boy, you see a lot of me, and I apologize in advance. It's just a
It's
hazard of the
awesome.
job, is that somebody's got to do the interviews, and so I get those. I get that done as cleanly as I can. With it, we have a brand new podcast called the Clifton Strengths Podcast, which is kind of theme based around those, where we spend some time talking about them. Dr. Jacqueline Robinson is on that. Some
Oh,
of our best, we
nice.
spend some time talking about well-being. This year, we've been talking about our role-based reports, so leadership, our leaders report, our managers report, and our sales report. And so that's been a ton of fun too. You can't miss me, Jim_Collison at Gallup.com if you want to send me an email.
Awesome. And you know that Jim will respond quickly. And if he doesn't,
Usually pretty fast. Yeah, usually.
it's a little
Yeah, you're
awkward.
like, liar.
Yeah. I'm not going to point it out.
Okay, sketchy. Was just saying that for the podcast.
Yeah, but Gallup has so much great content on the website and through the podcast. It's just opening up your eyes and pressing click, and you can learn so much about yourself. And we all need to make space for that so that we can have that self-discovery. So good.
Yeah, Susie, I think before you close, I
Yeah.
think the one thing I'd say on that is I think sometimes we think, we're in such a like popular book culture. Like, I want to know something about leadership. I'm going to buy the best leadership book. I'm going to read it in a weekend, and then that's all I need. And maybe for some people that works, but I think for a lot of people, little bits over time. This is where podcasting has been great.
Yeah.
Little consistency over time. Maybe an hour a week on the topic.
Yeah.
But over the course of a year, that's 52 hours that you've invested in that, right? And I just think it pays better dividends. So leaders, be in the long game, I think, on this, and little bits over time, and make sure you take some time for the future. And not just your future, but for the future of those around you. Take some time to sit down and have lunch or whatever with the future. They need it. They need it desperately. They need strong leaders desperately. So we need to be there for them.
Wow. That was so well. I can't even close after that. So 1 hour a week, like that's all it takes is an investment and in you and the people around you. Thank you, Jim. That was really good.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this has been Leaders with Leverage. Make sure that if you thought this was a great episode, share it with somebody. Let them know that you're thinking about them and you're investing in them and helping them take that time. So thanks for joining us. Share this, and thank you for being here.